National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza will last months after meeting with Israeli forces and Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas. He said in Israel they discussed a timetable for scaling back the intense combat operations amidst growing unease about the mounting death toll in Gaza, now nearing 19,000. Some 30% are children.
The terrorists chose to embed themselves among civilians. And that creates an incredible burden on the IDF, a burden that is unusual for a military in today's day and age. Now, that burden does not lessen the IDF's responsibility to act in a way that distinguishes between terrorist targets and innocent people, and to take every precaution to protect civilians and minimize the loss of life. It also doesn't lessen the burden, by the way, to ensure that humanitarian assistance flows.
Palestine's president urged an end to Israel's attacks on Gaza as winter hits and more than 1 million displaced Palestinians are crowded into the south of Gaza, most in the city of Rafah, where many are in tents with lack of sanitation, food, and medical care. Rami Al-Magari reports.
Here at the surgical operations room of Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Middle Gaza Strip, doctors are undertaking a surgery for Ahmed, a wounded man.
And now I will do the surgery.
Mahmoud Abu Aita is carrying out the surgery.
At our hospital we have 600 or more patients. More than 80% have been injured at least 3 or 4 weeks ago. We have a shortage of the instruments. As an orthopedic surgeon, I need drills, screws, plates. We have shortage of all of these equipment.
Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza has announced that all vaccinations for children in Gaza have run out completely. United Nations warned that the coastal enclave will face a public health crisis unless medical supplies enter the Israel-besieged Gaza. I am Rami Al-Magari in Gaza.
The UK and more than a dozen other nations, including Australia, Canada, and France, are calling on Israel to prevent settler violence in the West Bank. This comes as a new report from the United Nations finds settler violence in the West Bank is at record levels amidst the war in Gaza. Margot Pousset reports.
The report said 271 West Bank Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces since October, the deadliest year for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank since UN records began in 2005. Philippe Lazzarini is the head of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, or UNRWA.
Fear among the residents in the West Bank is also growing, and we start to observe some displacement of Palestinians. Significant and increasing settler violence, including the use of firearm, is also spreading. We all know that a lot of arms now have been distributed in the West Bank.
I'm Margot Pousset.
Protests across the U.S. demanding a ceasefire Thursday. Protesters shut down bridges in Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Portland, and Seattle. In San Francisco, protesters rallied outside Google's offices, protesting its billion-dollar contract with the Israeli military called Project Nimbus.
Google, you can't hide! Google, you can't hide! We charge you with genocide!
Labor unions, including the United Auto Workers, the American Postal Workers, United Electrical Workers, gathered on Capitol Hill Thursday calling for a ceasefire. Congress is departing Washington without a deal to pass wartime support for Ukraine and Israel. The Senate plans to return next week in hopes of finalizing a deal to place new restrictions on asylum claims at the U.S. border in exchange for Republican support for President Biden's $110 billion military aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and other security needs. Immigrant rights activists are raising alarm over proposed immigration policies. Jordan Del Fuego reports.
Republican proposals reportedly include a third country transit ban, which would prevent people transiting through a third country to seek asylum in the U.S., as well as raising the bar in the initial credible fear border screening interviews and an expansion of mandatory immigrant detention, among other actions. Blaine Bookley is a legal director for the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies. She said a client of hers named Dahlia, who was a victim of domestic violence, would likely be rejected under the proposed rule changes.
Never have their day in court and are summarily sent back to danger. Now is the time to stand firm in the best of our history
I'm Jordan Delfugue.
The European Union failed to agree on a $54 billion aid package to Ukraine, another blow after Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky failed to persuade U.S. lawmakers to approve $61 billion in Ukraine aid. The European Union did say it will open negotiations for Ukraine to join it as a member. The U.S. House of Representatives has approved a military spending bill, sending it to the president, who's indicated he will sign it. It includes an extension of the controversial warrantless surveillance power under the FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that was criticized by civil rights advocates. It's been used to spy on U.S. citizens, including organizers, activists, and even members of Congress. I'm Christina Onnested, reporting for Pacifica Radio.